Hi! When stringing a racket, have you ever realized that you'll be short of string as you reach the last cross string? Well, I did, but in my case, I realized this before I started the cross strings and proceeded to string it anyway. So you must be thinking, why did I string the racket? In this video, I'll share why and how I performed this practical patch job. All right, let's get into it. All right, so let me set the scene. I recently hosted a junior tournament here at the Royal Kona Resort Tennis Club. One of the players needed his racket strung an hour before his match, so he handed me his racket and a set of strings that was pre-cut in a Ziploc bag. And so this is where the story begins. And it was such an unusual sequence of events that I thought would make an interesting and hopefully entertaining video recreation. Before I get into it, I did want to mention that the racket and the strings used in this video is not the player's actual racket and strings. So the racket that he brought to me was the Babolat Pure Drive, but it was a Wimbledon edition. The racket that I'll be using is a regular Pure Drive. And the strings that he had in a Ziploc bag, I did save the Ziploc bag, was a Solstice Power 16, but for this I'll be using a Babolat Pro Hurricane Tour. Also, I did want to add that this patched up procedure is not something recommended by the USRSA or the IART, both organizations of which I am a member. And I did get permission from the player to perform this patched up procedure. All right, now let's get into it. All right, so like I do with all strings that I measure off of a reel, I do use the racket to measure the exact amount of string needed. And I did a video, and I'll post the link below where you can check that out. But especially if you receive a string that's pre-cut in a package like this. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and measure that amount, and I'm gonna again use the racket. So this racket has 16 mains, so I'm just gonna count off enough string for 8 mains, but you have to make sure you have enough length for that first one to reach the tension head. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So what I have is a mark right here, and I'm just gonna double it up, kind of fold it, but without kinking the string, and just run it through until I reach the that measurement and cut it off at that point. So this should be exactly enough string that I need to string the mains and have enough to tie off. So after measuring the mains, the remaining amount of strings felt a little bit short. And sure enough, after I measured it, there was only 15 feet left of string. So that was definitely not going to be enough to string the rest of the crosses. Typically on a racket like this, you need about 17 or 18 feet. So if that's not unfortunate enough, here are some other factors that I assessed at this point. It was the only set of strings that this player had. I couldn't swap the strings since I didn't carry them in my shop. And I didn't want to waste the strings if possible, and I wanted to save him money. So it was at this point that I asked the player if it would be okay if I do a custom patch job on his racket. He said he was game. In fact, I think he was more intrigued to find out how the patch job would come out. I assured him that he had no business hitting that low in the string bed anyway, and it wouldn't affect his play, and he agreed. All right, so here I'm weaving down towards the last few crosses, and I realized that I only have enough string to do 2 more crosses. If I try to do this other cross, I mean, I'll barely enough. So that left 3 crosses that I had to patch. So what I had to think ahead of time though is where I wanted to tie off the string, because it's not gonna be in a natural tie-off hole. In fact, I have here on this racket, I have some blue tape. And so these 2 right here are actually large enough holes to tie off. But this hole right here is where I'm gonna have to enlarge it. So I did another video called all about awls, and I'll leave the link below. But basically what I'm gonna do is enlarge this hole. So I'm gonna just use a regular straight awl, and it's nice to have a long tapered tip if you have one that's like this. I just put some chapstick on it first, and I'm gonna just lubricate it so I can get some of that coated in the inner walls of the grommet barrel. So I'll just do that. And then I have a heat gun down below here. So I'm gonna heat up the point for about 10 seconds to get it nice and hot. All right, so I have my awl here. And what I'm gonna do is put it into the hole and go as far in as it feels like it's pretty tight. And it's about there. So I'm just gonna let it sit there for about another 10 seconds or so, just to kind of let it melt or soften the grommet. And then after 10 seconds, I'm gonna push that all in some more and just let it sit there for another 10 seconds or so. All right, so it's starting to go in a little bit more. And basically I just want to make sure that this hole is going to be large enough so that I can fit, well, basically 2 strings in there so I can tie off. So I'll let that sit there for a little while. I do have to make sure that when I take it out, that I'm going to run the string through that hole and come back. And then again, this is where the tie off is going to be for this this string right here. All right, so I think that should be good. I'm gonna go ahead and remove the awl, and go ahead and weave these last 2 strings. And again, I'll end up tying off right here. So let me turn this around here. Okay. I can't do the one head because I don't have enough string length to do that. So I'll go ahead and tension it right here. Okay, I'm gonna apply the knot function there. And actually I'm gonna increase it. I normally do 5 pounds, but I'm gonna go up to 8 because this is not at the end, but it's, you know, within the string bed. So just to give it a little bit more tension. All right. So this is gonna be right here. All right, so here's the tie-off hole, or the one that we created or enlarged. And it's gonna be right in here. And because I applied chapstick in there earlier, it does allow it to slide in, so that made it a little bit easier to get in there. And this is 16 gauge string, so yeah, it's pretty thick going in through that hole, especially since it wasn't a tie-off hole originally. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tie off here on this string right here. And next I'm gonna bring in the string that I used to patch this bottom 3 crosses. I use RPM rough for this. So what I did is I measured about 5 feet, which will be enough to not only allow me to get to the tension head, but to run these 3 crosses right here. And again, I should have enough right there. So what I'm gonna do is I have 2 tie-off holes here, and they're natural tie-off holes, so that made it kind of easy on this racket. The one that I did actually didn't have the same holes, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and weave this. There's 19 crosses on this racket, so this would be the 17th cross. And So I can either tie off here or there, it doesn't really matter, but I just want to make sure that I have enough string length to reach the tension head, because I'm gonna tie that off after I tension the second one, or the 18th cross. So I'm gonna go ahead and use my string clamp right there to hold it in place. Now I could have used a starting clamp on the outside, but because this arm is right in the way, I decided to just go with my machine clamp and do that way. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and apply tension here. And I'm coming back this way. If I had the same color strings as that Diadem Solstice Par, I would have used it, but I didn't have anything that I could have matched it with, so the contrast was definitely there with these two different strings. So I'll go ahead and tension this one also. Now, what's good about this machine is that I can actually bring this clamp over and clamp this string on the same side of the racket. So it wasn't a problem for me to get these two clamps right there. All right, so I'm on the last cross, and I'm gonna go ahead and weave this through and then clamp it. And I'll go back and tie off that cross that was up here. So alright, so I got this in here. And I can easily just bring this clamp back here on this side. Alright, and it did have the knot function on. So this is the tie off right here. This is a natural tie off, so I'll just go ahead and make that right here. And then now I'm going to come back to this this cross right here, and I still have it on +8 on the knot tension. Okay, so even after I release after I tie the knot and release the tension, this will probably give a little bit, but again, because it's on the lower part of the string bed, it should be okay. Shouldn't be hitting down there, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and just tie this off on the natural tie-off hole. It is a pretty tight space, so I am using a pro knot, so it should be all right. Okay, so there's the 3 bottom crosses. That was the patch job right there. And on the original Racquet, I saved the extra pieces. I barely had enough. So like on the 2 mains, I mean, I only had, well, I had enough to reach, I think I had to use the bridge actually, starting clamp to create a bridge. So this is only about 8 inches of string right here. And then what I had left over on the other ends was just these 2. So you could see that this string set that was pre-cut was definitely short of what was needed to string this entire racket. Well, here's the final product, and you'll see his actual racket beside it. And so if you're wondering if this story had a happy ending, well, no, he didn't win the tournament. But he did say that he couldn't tell the difference between his 2 rackets. So I told him, well, that's a good thing because that was my goal. So in my book, I consider it a win. Thanks for watching. Happy stringing, and let your strings play.